Welcome to this Kase educational session. My name is Stenersen and I'm a professional nature photographer, Kase Educator and OM System Ambassador from Norway. In this video I will show you how to photograph the black grouse during its mating season while they are lekking. I will also show you how the Kase filter system works, as well as provide you with a few tips on how to make your great wildlife images look even better by using the Kase filter system. Where I live in Rendalen, in the southeastern part of Norway, it has been a long winter with lots of snow. Animals and birds have fought to stay alive during this cold season. Outside my photo hide up in the mountains, a golden eagle is feeding on a dead moose that didn't make it through the winter. Most of the moose have migrated down to the bottom of the valley, where the snow is not so deep and where there is much more food to be found. But the sun gets stronger day by day, as a warmer season is coming up. The snow starts to thaw as the days gets lighter. Up in the mountains, the ice breaks up from the rivers and the lakes. South-facing hillsides are almost free from the white, cold carpet, and the first migrating birds returns. The roe deer, which have struggled to survive for several months, are welcoming these changes. The bucks start to stake out their territory, although the rut is months away. Spring is finally here. In early mornings, strange sounds can be heard from open areas in the forest. These sounds can travel for several kilometers if the wind is right. It is the sound of the black grouse lekking. The black grouse is a bird that is endemic to the northern part of Europe. You will also find it further east throughout the boreal forests. They have these lekking sites that the birds have used for many years. Most typically out on frozen lakes or on open marshlands and places like that. And there the males will gather and display and fight over the right to mate with the females. The lekking season normally starts in March. Their first males will show up in March, maybe in February, to get ready for the big happening of the year. The females won't show up until late April or the first day during May, and it's only a window for about a week where the females will show up at the lekking site to mate. And when the females show up, things really happen. There's a lot of fighting between the males, a lot of displaying, and a lot of action. So that is the time when it's perfect to be there. They show up at the lekking site in the middle of the night when it's still dark. And you have to be there before the birds arrive. So what I do is that I use a camouflage tent that I put up at the lekking site in the beginning of the season, so that the bird gets used to the tent, so I don't disturb them. So I go in, set everything up in the evening, and then I sleep in the tent. It can get cold in the spring here in Norway, and like -5 to 10 to maybe even as cold as -15 degrees Celsius is not impossible. So you have to use a warm sleeping bag, a warm sleeping mattress, and also warm clothes. All in all, this is a lot of gear that I have to haul with me and bring with me to the lekking site, which often is also distant. They can be several kilometers away from the nearest road, and carrying all this in a backpack is not very practical, especially if you have to go skiing. So that's why I use a pulk, this kind of sled that I pull behind me. And it's much more comfortable and practical than packing everything down in a backpack. If you disturb the birds during this period when the females are there, that's not good, because they only have this week when they are mating. So all in all, you have to be prepared, and you have to be careful, silent and calm. Not just for the birds, but obviously that is the main reason, but also to get the images and the results that you're after. This session, where I will show you how I photograph the black grouse, is filmed after the lekking season is over. And that is because I'm very cautious not to disturb and spook the birds during their mating season. I go in the evening and leave the area quickly. So that's why I filmed this after the lekking season is over. And this is not a typical place for the black grouse. We are up in the mountains, and that is only because as soon as the snow disappears, a lot of mosquitoes will show up. And up here in the mountains, there's a little bit of breeze, so the mosquito plague isn't that big as it is down in the valley. So that is why I went up here to film this session. The black grouse is shy, so of course you have to stay hidden. There are many ways you can do that, but I prefer to use a camouflage tent. Many of the tents I have used over the years are various types of pop-up tents. They work, but after I started using this tragopan tent, I won't go back to any of the things that I've used before, because many of the pop-up tents that are made for hunters, so the solutions aren't optimal for us photographers. The tragopan tent has openings, very low openings, so we can get a low angle. It has snoots with mesh that you can put your camera lens out through and still be able to be hidden, but you can also look outside. And yeah, it can take a lot of wind, and it's very easy to put up and take down. And it's big enough for me to sleep in as well. So you need something to sleep on, of course. And it can get cold from the snow and wet as well. So that's why I use a foam mat in the bottom. On top of that, I have an inflatable sleeping mat, and also a warm sleeping bag, like this one from Ayungelak. It's a nice and warm down bag that goes down to -18, with holes for your arms, so you don't have to take off your sleeping bag to take pictures. You can just wake up in the morning, open the zippers and put your arms out, and you're ready to take pictures. So let's put that one in there as well. And the way I organize things inside the tent is that I put my sleeping bag on the opposite sides of where the birds will be. So if this had been a real situation, then the birds would be on that side of the tent in the morning, because then I have room over here to put up my tripods and my cameras, so I don't have to start reorganizing the inside of the tent in the morning and make noise and potentially scare off the birds. I have my batteries over there, I have my memory cards over there, I have my my headlamp in the middle, and I have my thermal bottles and food over to the right. And that's how I do it every time, because then I know that I can find it even though it's dark inside the tent. I don't have to turn on the headlamp to, for instance, find a new battery or find my thermal bottle to get a cup of coffee. It's about making things as practical and smooth as possible. I wake up, put my arms out through the sleeping bag, and then turn on the camera, and I'm ready. You have openings up here, and you have openings down here. So you have the possibility to shoot from a normal viewpoint and a very low viewpoint. And I like shooting from low viewpoints very often to get the low angle and then blur out both the foreground and the background better. So what I normally do is I work with two cameras. I set up one on a tripod, and then I have the other camera down here. And down here I can get a very nice angle. And for instance, I can use this for video and just let it run. And then I can use my stills camera down here. And then get a variation of both the angle and the material. It's all about being as effective as possible when you're out working. Now the sun is starting to set and you can see all the mosquitoes that turn up. Well, anyway, by organizing my tent this way, it's very practical. At all times as nature photographers, we have to remember that we are visitors in the home of the animals and the birds, and every visitor should behave. I am an OM system ambassador, so of course I use OM system and Olympus cameras and lenses. And most of the wildlife images have been captured with the 300mm f4 Pro, which is a great lens. It's not that big, and it's very sharp. So this is my go-to setup when I photograph wildlife. It's easy to carry around compared to a full-frame camera and a full-frame lens. I use Kase filters. I have used many brands over the years, but none of them has been able to combine the things that I look for in one filter system the same way as Kase have done. First of all, it's extremely practical and easy to use. It's very rugged. It can take a lot of beating. The coating is excellent, and there is no color cast. And they are also very sharp. You could stack these filters and lose no sharpness in your image. And for me, no other filter system is able to give me all these things at once. In these cameras, you have a live ND filter, which is a computer-generated filter, which works great. It does. So if I have left my ND filters back home, then the filters that I have inside my cameras will do a great job. But there is a few situations where the built-in ND filter is not as good as a physical ND filter that you put in front of the lens. And that is for video. The live ND filter in these cameras do not work for video. So when I'm filming, I have to put an ND filter in front of my lens. And the other thing is that if you need to balance the sky as well, you don't have a graded ND filter in these cameras. So then you will have to put an ND filter, a graded ND filter in front of the lens to darken the sky. As a professional photographer, it's great to have, but you also need dedicated external filters to use in some situations. What is filters? A very easy way to put it is that it's some kind of thin glass that you put in front of your lens to give you an effect that you want. We have various filters. We have ND filters, which is kind of gray filters, like some kind of sunglasses, that will help you to get a longer shutter. For instance, if you want to take pictures of moving water during the day. You have graduated ND filters, which are dark at the top and lighter at the bottom, to help you get a correct exposure. If you, say, take picture of a sunset and you want to darken the sky and balance it with your landscape in front of it. Ta-da! This is the graded ND filter. As you can see, it's dark on top, clear on the bottom. And then you can adjust it up and down accordingly to how you want to darken your sky. Or turn it around. Solid steel frame. The ND filter. This is a ND64. And I also use an ND8. And the ND64 is, of course, then stronger. That means darker than the ND8. For use in various lighting conditions. This is for strong light, and the ND8 when the light is not so strong, of course. We also have polarizing filters, which is also kind of like sunglasses. But their primary task is to remove reflections, and it will also enhance colors. So it's great to use for like images where you have water. You want to remove reflections from the water. You want to see the structure and the rocks at the bottom of the water. But it's also great, let's say after a rainfall, you want to take a landscape photography with lots of leaves and foliage and things like that, with a lot of reflections coming off the water. Then a polarizer will be great to use. This is the polarizer filter. Looks like an ND filter, but look what happens when I turn it around. It varies. The strength varies between dark and lighter. And the darker it is, the more effect will be applied. That means the more reflections will be removed and the more the colors will be enhanced. We are now going to take a look at the scene and see how the various filters will affect the appearance of the image. These images are all raw files. White balance was set to sun and no edits have been made in Lightroom except from a little bit sharpening. As we see from this first image, there's a lot of reflections in the water. The sky is quite flat and the colors are not much enhanced. Once more, I would like to point out that these are raw files. So if I was about to use this file, I would of course have to do some more editing. But for this video, I didn't do that. I just wanted to show you how the filters will affect the image and nothing else. Now we can see that things have happened. I have now mounted the Kase circular polar filter in front of my lens, and we can see that a lot of reflection is gone and the colors are also more vivid. On this image, the polar filter is also being used in addition to the ND8 filter. We can see that the surface of the water is much more blurred because we now have a longer shutter time, giving the water time to move during the exposure compared to the previous image. When I took this series of photos, it was cloudy and some of the images are shot in full sunlight and some with a slight overcast. On this image I used the circular polar filter and the ND64 filter. The shutter time is 0.8 seconds, and as we see, the surface is now starting to look kind of velvet-like due to the long exposure. Here we can see that something has happened to the sky, and that is because I have used the graduated 0.9 ND filter, which means that I have darkened the sky and the rest of the image is not affected except from the polar filter that was also used. Here I have used the polar filter. I've used the ND8 filter and also the graduated 0.9 ND filter, which means I get a shutter time of 1/5 of a second, giving a quite nice and smooth surface on the water. And I've also, thanks to the graduated ND filter, been able to darken the sky and therefore balancing the image much better than how it was in the beginning before we started applying the filters. The last, and in my opinion, best image. Here I have used the Polo filter to enhance the colors and reduce the reflections of the water. I've used the ND64 filter to get a long shutter of 1 second. And I also used the 0.9 graduated filter to darken the sky and balancing the foreground and the background, creating a much better image than this one, which was what we started out with. At the end, I would like to show you an example of why I love polarizing filters. This is an image of a butterfly that I photographed in the field behind my house. This is a raw file without the use of a polarizing filter. Colors are quite nice, but look what happens when we attach the polarizing filter in front of the lens. See how much the colors are enhanced, see how vivid the colors are. And remember, this is a raw file. No edits have been made in Lightroom. This is how it looks straight out from the camera with the polarizing filter. But you can also use these filters for wildlife photography and video. And to get full control of your exposure in the video, you have to control the shutter and the amount of frames per second. And a general rule is that you use double the shutter time compared to frames per second. With 50 frames per second, you will need to have a shutter at 1/100th of a second. If we want a shallow depth of field, let's say you're filming with an aperture of 2.8 in the middle of the day, you will have a problem with your exposure. It will be overexposed. So that's why we use an ND filter in front of the camera to balance the exposure. But you can also use these filters in a creative way. Let's say you want to enhance the movement of an animal or a bird, then you can put an ND filter in front of your camera to get a longer exposure. Let's say 160 to 180 of a second is great for capturing running mammals, at least larger mammals like moose, roe deer, and animals like that. Smaller animals, you will most likely have to use a bit faster shutter because they move so fast. I will show you some of my experiences that I had during the lekking season of the Black Grouse, which is I don't know how many times I've slept out night after night to look at and photograph the Black Grouse during the mating season, but it's a magnificent sight. And to wake up in your tent in the early morning and you hear the birds calling just a few meters outside your tent, it's amazing. It's just amazing. There are three reasons why I use filters when working with these black grouse. And there are also three different kinds of filters that I used, either one by one or I use them combined. And the first is the polarizer to enhance the colors and remove some of the reflections on the hard surface of the snow. The second is that I used a graded ND filter because the sun was rising behind the birds, so I wanted to darken the sky a little bit so it doesn't burn out. And I also used an ND filter when I was filming. When the light was very strong and the sun had risen above the trees behind the birds, I could just leave all three filters on. So I could, with just flick of a button, I could switch between having a setup that was great for filming and a setup that was great for photography. And it's very practical for me. And I doubt that it would be so easy or maybe even possible to work so seamlessly with another filter system than the Kase filters. The effect of the polarizer filter will vary with the angle to the sun. If you shift your angle, then the effect of the filter will vary. So that's why you need to be able to control or adjust the settings of the polarizer. It could also be that you sometimes want a strong effect and sometimes you just want a little bit effect. This is very easy to do with a Kase filter system. And the polarizer, as long as you have more than enough shutter time, like in the middle of the day, strong light, bright sun, I leave the polarizer on at all times. Almost the only time I take it off is when the light starts to drop. So I need to raise my ISO quite high, and also to get as quick shutter time as possible. I need to get all the light that I can get onto the sensor. And now let's take a look on how the Kase Armor filter system works. First, we'll pop the camera up on the tripod, like that. This lens has a 62mm front threading, so I have to use a step-up ring from 62 to 72mm. With this lens I don't even need to take off the lens hood, I can just leave it on. And then the ring that you attach the filter holder to, screw that onto the step-up ring, like that. And if you go around shooting on various locations, you can leave this on, and there's also a cap that comes along with the filter system that you just click on, and then you have cover for your lens. You don't need to take off these rings. And then you have the filter holder. Okay, I want the polarizer on the back. Not a problem, put it in. Magnet snaps it into place. And then this also, magnet, snaps on. The effect of the polarizer can be adjusted with this wheel. Easy and convenient. Maybe I want an ND filter in front. No problem, snaps into place. Maybe I want even one more ND filter. Not a problem. Want to take it off? Just use your nail on the little rim, little edge here. Really strong, these magnets, so you really need to have something to grab onto. I want an ND filter to darken the sky, just the top of the image. Not a problem. Clips on. And then you can move it up and down to adjust it. You also have a knob here. Screw this tight, and the filter is not possible to move up and down, and you won't lose it if it catches onto something. Remember now that the filters and the holder is attached to the camera only by magnets. It is really secure. You also have a security function here. Like this lever you have to pull down on. Pull the lever and take it off. Very, very strong magnets. Very secure system. I don't dare to slam it any harder because of my camera and the lens mount. But it's very, very strong. Until next time, take care.